Welcome to Two Dudes, One Movie Podcast, the podcast where two dudes dive into cinematic masterpieces from a different decade each week. From black and white classics to modern day blockbusters, we'll be covering it all. This season, we've been focusing on romantic comedies. And for our final episode of the season, we're taking a look back. Rick, it's that time of the season again, a celebration of what has come. It's our romantic comedy podcast finale.
Park. I have zero recap. I apologize.
I know, we kept a little recap in our notes, and I said, Rick recaps the podcast season, question mark, and you wrote underneath it.
No.
Brilliant.
Park, we're just here to toast. I have a high noon. You have a Coke?
I have some water now.
Water.
It's a new year, Rick. 2024, year of health. That's what I say.
So we're toasting to a rom-com finale. There's no need for recaps, Park, because we're going to be recapping the whole season.
That's true. That's true, Rick. Hey, everybody, we've got a really exciting podcast for you today. For all of you who are listening who didn't listen to last season finale, well, it's probably totally different. But we're excited. We've got some fun activities planned. We're just going to take a look back. We've got some superlatives. And, of course, culminating to the last final ranking of the season. Did the ROM and the COM scale hold up to our absolute final rankings? Stay tuned to find out. Rick, why don't we just kind of like jump into this? So producer Becky scavenged through all of the podcasts from this season. She found some interesting insights from the season, a couple of things that we thought we would bring to everyone's attention. First and foremost, she noted that I, Parker, clearly do not like the enemies to lovers trope in the rom-coms. The films that I was harder pressed on ended up being You've Got Mail and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, at least in the sense of buying the romantic relationship of those couples.
Is this based on our scale, Park? That you don't rate these guys that well?
I guess so, yeah. I guess that's what she found. But, I mean, I agree with her insight in what she found because it's obviously what I said in the past. But both of those films, even though How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days was the film that I chose, and I think it's a really enjoyable rom-com, it's not one of those films that you really buy into the romantic relationship of it because it all happens so quickly. And it's like she's absolutely crazy, and then they go play cards with her parents, and everything changes in a bathroom, you know?
It's true. I remember that.
On a toilet of all places, Rick.
To be fair, Park, if you're enemies, you can make an argument that there's only one place that you can turn to lovers, and that's in a bathroom.
The enemy of my enemy is my lover.
Or over the internet, I guess, because one of the parties can catfish. So.
Yeah, Rick, that's like the OG Catfish movie right there, isn't it?
It really is. There probably really wasn't anything as like similar to that before, right?
Actually, there is a movie, I think from the 50s or the 60s, that basically takes the plot of that movie of You've Got Mail, but it's not obviously with email. I want to say it's with they're like pen pals or something, and it's writing.
I forgot writing letters was even a thing, Park.
That was the OG.
I can't believe it. I thought we just went straight from carrier pigeons to emails.
We didn't communicate at all, and then computers came out, and that's when we started communicating with each other, Rick.
How can I forget the postal system, Park? We learned all about it at our Christmas special this past Christmas.
Oh, how could you forget that?
I don't know.
Gosh, what did the United States Postal Office ever do to you, Rick?
Well, where would we be if it didn't exist?
What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you with the Postal Service, Rick? Have you ever been, betrayed by them?
Betrayed by the Postal Service?
Yeah.
More than just not getting letters, you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Were you ever expecting something, of high value and it didn't come, or...
I will say the most anxiety that I have when it comes to Postal Service is when you buy something off of eBay and they send it through USPS. Because then I'm just I feel like I've gotten things lost in that before. And two, I just always have the feeling that if I buy anything on eBay, someone's just trying to rip me off anyways.
I've personally never had any issues with my mail before, thankfully, but since this apartment we moved into, they have a third party that the mail gets delivered to them and then they deliver packages to our doors, which is really annoying. And multiple times they have screwed up packages with that. So this is me highly unrecommending the Fetch service. If anybody knows about that, who's listening out there, if your apartment does that, run away.
I will say, though, maybe this is a level of betrayal. We have gotten 2 mirrors that were sent USPS, and they both came shattered. Never actually reached our door, and it annoys the crap out of me because only the lovely American United States Postal Service does this. Is park our boxes, our mailboxes, I'm sure yours might be similar. They're like this big, right?
Yep.
So every single time there's a package that comes, it'll come into like our mail room, which is, has the little, they can just put it in a little bin. You enter a code, you open it. Apparently, the postmen and women are too good to use this system because every single time something gets sent to us, even if it's big enough to fit in our little tiny box, we get a little slip in there that says, "Too big for mailbox, couldn't deliver." And I have to go drive to the postal service and have an interaction with the human, which I don't want. Like that's the whole appeal of the postal service.
Forbid.
I know. It's the same exact reasoning of why every single time you DoorDash something, you just click leave at doorstep. Like I don't want to have interactions.
I never DoorDash. I think I've Uber Eats and DoorDashed once in my life because we got like a free promo for it or something. But I don't like it. I'd rather go pick up my food, shake someone's hand as I hand them my physical cash, Rick.
I DoorDashed from the closest restaurant to me today during work because I was working during dinner.
Incredible. I know you had a long day, and yet you're still here with all of our lovely podcast listeners.
Still bringing the rants on meaningless things. That's what we need. So that's why people listen to podcasts. You don't listen to podcasts for the topics you come for.
It's true. It's true. But we have to continue to stay on topic, or we're going to be here for too long, Rick.
I don't want to be here that long, Park. Let's go.
You don't love the podcast family that much. The next insight that producer Becky found from this past season is I am straight up from a rom-com. Apparently, multiple characters have been compared by you to be me, those being Alvy from Annie Hall and Albert Brenneman from Hitch.
So I'll actually take it a step further that I think in any movie ever made, you can find a character, even if it's like a guy in the background, that is Parker.
Do you think in Breakfast from Tiffany's, I'm just the upstairs neighbor?
Oh, gosh.
In like a non-racist way.
I will say, if there was like no weird racist plays on that role, probably.
Right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I feel like, I just kind of like could be dropped and placed in any rom-com and just find my way,
It's true. I can just go through some of the movies. I feel like The Big Sick, you can get a little bit of Ray Romano in you. Actually, I've scratched that. You'd be like one of the comedians.
Am I, what's his name?
You're not Bo. Sorry.
Ugh, dang it.
Bo he has too much of like the I don't care about this vibe to where you would not get
That's
that
true.
vibe.
That's probably more like you, honestly.
I guess so. But mainly rom-coms is where you will see a wild Parker essence. That's what we can call it. Like you're watching like a nature film. But you can find him in practically any
Would
movie.
you say that my spirit movie genre is rom-com?
It's got to be. I don't think you can even question it.
You don't think my spirit movie genre is westerns?
No. I think I would even go to the point that your like very specific types of movies would be like 2010s rom-coms. I know you are similar to a character that's pre-2010s or 2000. I would go 2000s, not 2010s.
That's like peak rom-com era, Rick. That's such a compliment.
I would do that. I do like Hallmark is in there. I feel like every Hallmark movie kind of gets it from there down too.
Yeah.
You're based in a Nicholas Sparks book.
Rick, I love that. Big Nicholas Sparks boy. Over here.
You read him. That's the only books you read.
I read him
Nicholas
up and
Sparks.
down.
You've never read another book that's not Nicholas Sparks.
The summer reading list, I would just throw them out and read Nicholas Sparks.
Literally from third grade.
From third grade, not even second, Rick. Second. I was an early Nicholas Sparks reader.
Nicholas Sparks was the very first 2 words you said. You would call your parents Nicholas and Sparks.
I think maybe next season we need to get Nick on the podcast.
Does he do podcasts? You think he does them?
I
don't even know. I literally don't even know what the man looks like. Do you know what he looks like?
I think he literally looks like what tropes of what people look like on those corny romantic novels, like long brown hair.
I'm gonna Google him. Anytime I think of a writer that I can't picture, I just think of Stephen King with different hairstyles.
I don't think he looks like Stephen King.
Oh.
Oh, you just raised your eyebrows. Oh.
Well, because I typed in Nicholas and Nick Cage came up. And I was like, is Nick Cage actually Nicholas Sparks? Are they the same person?
That would be crazy.
That would be crazy. See, I feel like Nicholas Sparks, because he's a lot younger than I thought. He's 58, which means that he's in his 40s when these books started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe before that, he could have been in his 30s. I just feel like he was just kind of like a bro, and he found the code. He watched a movie, and he watched When Harry Met Sally, and he was like, I think that I can write a book with the same plot with different faces, and I would be a top seller. And that's exactly what he did.
Well, you know what they say. All art has already been created. It's just slightly edited versions of it now. Tarantino has, in a way, made a career off of that. So
he doesn't really do imitations. He just kind of does them for some of his movies.
A lot of things he just pulls straight out from other movies. But he's also a great director, so
yeah, he is.
Can't hate on Dirt.
I feel like that's the pass he gets.
Yeah.
But
Rick, we got one more insight from producer Becky, and this is probably the most obvious insight of them all. I'm just going to ask the question, and you will answer it. What makes a good classic rom-com, Rick? What is the staple that needs to be?
New York it has to be.
Rick, that's the answer.
It has to be New York. There's nothing else it could be.
Almost every rom-com this season took place in New York, and when it didn't take place in New York, it was in its cousin city, Chicago or Los Angeles.
It started making me angry how much times I had to watch New York. And I don't know if I know what New York is anymore. Does it even exist? Is it just some movie
it's
sets?
Fake. It's just movie sets, Rick.
It was only made for movie sets. I don't think it was made for anything else.
It's literally like the moon landing, how that's fake and was all done in a studio. New York City is all fake and just done in a studio.
That part of America doesn't even exist. You drive up there, you keep driving on the highway, you see the signs for New York. Next thing you know, you're in Canada.
Rick, it's crazy.
Well, Park, are we ready to crown?
Rick, I am so ready. So our first big superlative of the night is going to be the crowning of the king and queen of rom-com. This is 20th and 21st century. Rick, I'm kind of excited about this, but I thought, did you do your own, or are we doing this together?
I think we're doing it together because I was really thinking, and I couldn't, and I like sometimes to pull out arguments, but I need to get myself to believe my own arguments.
Yeah.
And Park, there's really only one answer here for king, maybe two for queen, but I couldn't get myself there.
Rick, why don't you go ahead? Please announce the king of the rom-coms.
Park, it has to be Tom Hanks. I think it's the same thing, as king and rom-com and Tom Hanks. It's all the same. Park, if I never watched a rom-com before, and I've never seen Tom Hanks before, I would still think that Tom Hanks and rom-coms go together. It would just appear in my head. They're the same thing.
It'd be a physical manifestation. I have to agree with you. And we didn't even hit on a few of his rom-coms in this season, of course, because we are so limited to one per decade. But there's plenty of other great Tom Hanks rom-coms out there that we'll probably have to explore on another season of rom-com somewhere down the road.
It's true, because you can dive deep in rom-coms, Park. We could be here for decades.
Our podcast could literally just pivot and be rom-coms for the rest of our lives.
Oh, Park, I just feel like eventually we'll be in our late 30s, which I guess isn't that far away, 10 years. And the rom-coms will just turn into we're just become a Bachelor podcast. I feel like it's like one step away from you and I just commentate on The Bachelor every week.
Hey, Rick, that's not a bad thing. I love watching The Bachelor.
I love it too. I'm just letting you know where that road would lead us.
For everyone wondering, back in college, and I obviously lived together. We were roommates. We had 2 other roommates, and all 4 of our roommates would get together. We would BBB, bro bachelor bonding, grab some beers, watch The Bachelor. It was a great time.
Yep. Quadruple Bs, the killer bees.
The killer bees, baby. So many bees right now. Speaking of bees, how about we talk about our queen bee?
Oh, I hated that so much. You go ahead.
Rick, this one was a little tougher for us to decide on. I think there were 2 very prominent choices based on our season of who could be the queen. And it's the 2 ladies who showed up in more than one movie from this season, and that was Meg Ryan and Audrey Hepburn. But I think you would agree with me that we decided that the queen would be Audrey Hepburn because she was first. She was on the top. She's the one that set the precedent for everyone after her. And so, because of that, Audrey Hepburn is our queen of the rom-coms, Rick.
I think that's fair, Parker. I don't think we can do anything about it. I was at a thrift store the other day, and I didn't see a Meg Ryan poster. I saw an Audrey Hepburn poster for Breakfast at Tiffany's. You see Audrey everywhere, Park.
She definitely has cemented herself in the cinematic history, the realm of cinema history, more profoundly than Meg Ryan has. Even though Meg Ryan is in better romantic comedies, at the end of the day, Audrey Hepburn is kind of like the golden child of the rom-coms that kickstarted the genre in a lot of ways.
She's one of the most notable people in movie history, in Hollywood history. So
it's true. Just can't get enough of Audrey. Love that girl.
Park, it's time we move on to the thing that makes rom-coms. You can even say that this thing makes movies. There would be no movies, Park, without scenes.
That's a really great analysis, Rick.
So what is the best scene award for you, Park?
Rick, this was an easy one for me. This is the backyard scene in Crazy Stupid Love. That scene is so funny. It is everything in the movie is built up to that point. You know when you watch ensemble movies and all these different characters are interacting and they're kind of in their own quadrants and you're like, when is this all going to connect? I have never seen an ensemble movie connect better than that.
Looking at you, Valentine's Day.
Yeah, in any of them, but it's just so well written and executed that there's no question in my mind that it is the best scene of the season, Rick.
I had to go a different direction here because I think I might have said during the podcast, I think the backyard scene is like a top 50 scene in movies to me, just because I think it's like literally perfectly done. The movie is absolutely nothing without that scene. And I think the whole movie could have been like very average, and then that scene would have still made it to be like an incredible movie. So love the backyard scene, even though there's a creepy kid in the movie, but we can go past that for the scene. Park, how do you go a different direction? Because in my late 20s, am I considered my late 20s? I don't know.
Yeah. You're past 25, right?
I'm past 25.
Technically, then you're in your late 20s.
Okay, I'm in my late 20s. I become more accustomed to a little bit of nostalgia here and there. That literally has nothing to do with what I'm saying. The hamburger scene, Park. I love hamburgers so much. The way that Kumal says hamburger and his whole rants, he's throwing a fit in a drive-thru. I resonate with that, Park. I've had many breakups in college and high school that I went to go get a hamburger after them. And the exact same thing happened every single time, actually. You know, so like literally, it was
is that
play
like
for
your
play.
Is that your comfort food, hamburgers?
Yes.
That's
and when a
good
big
comfort
life
food.
event happens, I get a hamburger and I throw a fast food trash can across the drive-thru.
No, Rick, did you do that?
No, I did not. That was in the movie, Park.
Oh, well. I didn't know. It sounded like that movie mirrored your life there for a moment, so I wasn't
No,
sure.
Parker, I feel like after every time there was any type of little heartache or even a test failure, which happened, I guess, a decent amount in college, always went to Culver's. It was right there.
Culver's, that was great, man. That like slid in halfway through our college careers, and we abused that place.
And I would never even say that was always my my fast food burger of choice, but it's like literally right next to our apartment. So
Yeah, like I didn't have a car in college. I could have walked there. I probably did walk there at some point, honestly.
good old butter burgers. Is that what they call them? Butter, butter
Yeah.
bag. I don't even forget.
Yeah.
Butter
You got it.
burgers.
Rick, we got to keep on moving though. Best couple award. It looks like we are unanimous in our decision here. So, do you want to go ahead and just speak the obvious?
At the same time, 1,
Two,
2, 3.
3. Harry and Sally.
Oh, that was dumb.
I know.
You go.
I mean, it's obvious why we voted for them. They are the most fleshed out, well written characters. The first probably 30 minutes of that movie is just dialogue banter back and forth between these two characters and their ideologies and how they act and behave and what wires them. And they're so real and authentic in their portrayal in so many ways.
You can't really have a movie without the other. Like, you couldn't really even replace either of the actor or actors.
Where so many of these movies and rom-coms are based around a gimmick, When Harry Met Sally is based around Harry and Sally.
I also feel like half of our movies, if not all of them except for this, there's really just like one character kind of carrying.
Yeah, that's true. These are a couple of my favorite awards right here. First up is Most Parker Character. And we kind of already teased this from Becky's insights, but I personally think that I am most like Albert Brenneman from Hitchcock.
So I wrote Alvy, and I honestly think you're like 50-50 of both of them. Like, if they had a baby, I think you would pop out.
That would make sense. I could totally get behind that. But just the way Albert busts a move and stuff, and spills things on himself. I spill things on myself all the time, Rick.
I don't. Not a
See?
smart guy. I believe.
That's why you're not that. But Rick, we do have a Most Rick Character award.
Parker, there's only one answer here, I feel like, as well.
Rick,
It's got to
do
be
you want-
Harry.
I was gonna ask if you wanted to count down again, but I guess
Oh,
not.
no. That was a failure, Park. We don't have that level of chemistry.
That's fine. Yeah, it's true. You are such a Harry Burns. You're just cynical.
Always trying to make a little joke about something.
You're definitely Harry Burns. I was trying to think about other characters who you could potentially be, and I honestly couldn't think of anyone that was anywhere remotely in the same category.
I was watching this movie with my wife, and there's a lot of times it's like, damn, I feel like I've done this or made this joke. Park, the best final chase, and we're not talking about Chase Levy. What do you got, Park?
Rick, I put 10 things I hate about you. I think that is just the best chase of this season. There's a car chase. Matthew McConaughey's on a motorcycle. They get off in the middle of traffic on a bridge.
We didn't watch that movie.
What?
We didn't watch 10 Things I Hate About You.
Oh, what did I say? I said 10 things. I meant... I didn't mean that.
I read that in our notes at least 5 or 6 times and never questioned it until just now.
The 10 got me. The 10 got me, Rick. My actual choice, though, is how to lose a guy in 10 days. I just want to make sure I'm saying this correctly now. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Rick, is my choice because Matthew McConaughey is driving a motorcycle, smacking on taxi cab windows. They're blocking traffic in the middle of a New York City bridge, and it all culminates in a helicopter pan shot to end the film, Rick. You can't ask for anything more. That is the ultimate chase scene of the season.
It's true, Park. I wrote Sabrina, but I don't think that's true. I lied to myself. It's How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Sabrina's the first, technically, of the season, though.
It is. And it's probably one of the first things that started that trope. It also involves a cat. I don't like cats. I don't know why I wrote that.
I will say I appreciate how streamlined the Sabrina chase is. They're, Humphrey Bogart's in his office, and they're like, she's getting on this ferry, and he's like, I gotta go, I love her. And then he runs out of the room, and then they're on the ferry, and he comes around the corner, and they like kiss, and that's the end of the movie.
I remember watching the movie, and I feel like I was waiting for the movie to wrap up, and then there's like 6 minutes left, and then that's when everything just kind of like
just
just wrapped up
real fast. We've got one more award here, and that award.
Oh, I didn't see that, Park. It's in all caps.
That award is the best rom-com award.
You do the honors, Park.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are not revealing that right now because you're going to have to wait for our final official rankings at the end of this podcast episode to hear what is the best rom-com. You like how I did that, Rick?
I feel like you're like the host of Survivor, and they're like about to count the votes.
Like at the commercial break.
Like the show before the season finale of how old Survivor worked. He would like grab the votes. He's like, we're going to tally the votes. And we'll see you next time at our live season finale.
Oh, man. I would hate that. I never really watched Survivor, so I can't speak into it.
Oh, I love Survivor. I think I've watched, there's over 40 seasons. I think I've watched every single one.
That's wild to me.
I know.
I haven't even watched all of the Bachelor seasons, Rick, and I love that show.
I will say I caught up on all the seasons I did not watch, I feel like semi-recently. Just like sick days and stuff like that. You can binge a Survivor pretty fast, Bark.
I got another fun little topic for you. Wish list. What's a movie that you wish we hadn't watched this season of the movies we watched? If you had to kick one off the island, Survivor terms, who you kicking?
Annie Hall. I feel like I was going through my list of movies, and it's the only one that I was like, I could live without seeing this.
It's so funny. I wrote Sabrina or Annie Hall with a question mark. I think I lean towards Annie Hall as well, which I think is so funny because that's the only one that's a Best Picture winner.
It is funny.
It's just like, I don't want to kick it off because of that, and I think it's something that we need to watch and see, but it might have been my least favorite film of the season just because I wasn't quite as invested in it all, I guess.
It's almost like the Oscars don't mean anything. Who would have thought?
You take that back.
Who would have thought that the Oscars...
All right, we're not about to throw down here.
Publicize crap.
Oh my gosh, Rick. All right. We're moving on to our next wish list. What's a movie you wish we had watched this season?
Park, if there is a king of rom-coms, there is also Prince. And I would say that Prince might be Steve Carell. So 40-Year-Old Virgin would be on that list.
Wow. Fun fact, I've actually never seen that film before.
It's a funny one.
I've seen like bits and pieces of it, but just the premise of it is also just fantastic. I love the idea of that. So that's a great wish list. Maybe in rom-com season 2 down the road, Rick will loop back around to that one.
Yes, before we watch the Bachelor season 72. I don't even know what season we're on now.
Yep. Rick, this one was easy because it was one that I really thought we were going to watch at the end of this season, but was taken away from me. And that's Footloose. And I will stand by it. I will stand by that being a rom-com for the rest of my life. Whether I'm right or wrong,
ridiculous.
It is a rom-com. But if everyone out there is saying it's not a rom-com, then my backup option would be Sleepless in Seattle. Another Tom Hanks, Megan Ryan rom-com special, Rick.
I legitimately think that if Footloose is a rom-com, I'm just going to make everything that has music or dance numbers rom-coms.
You could say there's elements of that, and most, if not all.
I agree with Sleepless in Seattle. For a while, I thought we were gonna do it, but I mean, it just
kind of fell through the cracks. I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't know. We do go by decades, and 10 years is a long time. So
yeah, we did. I mean, we hit the other '90s staple with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, though, so we can't be too upset with ourselves.
I think the moment is here. We go through our rankings, and we finally give the audience what they asked for, and that is the best rom-com award.
Rick, this is exciting. So we actually have two lists here in our notes. We have our rankings based on the rom and the com scale, and then we have our final rankings that we don't use the rom and the com scale for. I think it'd be kind of interesting if we read them both off so we can kind of compare that list as well.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Let's do how we did last time. We'll go from 10 to 5. Obviously, go from the top there until we get to our top 2.
Let's do it. Would you like to start out, Park?
I'd love to. My bottom ranking on the rom and com scale from this season was Annie Hall. But that is not how my final rankings for this season are going to go. My actual number 10 of this season is Breakfast at Tiffany's. I really wanted to love this film, Rick. I know you really wanted to love this film as well. I had really high expectations going into this film as well, and it was not what I was expecting. And it was just kind of all this convoluted story that didn't really have any narrative focus. And I think that's part of it because we've talked about this in the podcast. It's her personality, all that great stuff, but it doesn't work as a movie for me. So next for the rom and the com scale, I have a tie for 8-9, Breakfast at Tiffany's and Palm Springs. My number 9 for my official list is Annie Hall. And then my number 8 for my official list is Sabrina. Moving back to the rom and the com scale, tied for number 6 and 7 in a sense, is Sabrina and the Big Sick, which is really interesting to think about that the Big Sick is all the way down at number 6 on the rom and the com scale because that is such a great movie. My number 7 film on my official list is You've Got Mail, and then my number 6 on my official list is Palm Springs. And Palm Springs kind of came out of nowhere. I was really surprised by that film. That was not one that I had been thinking about, not one that we really had discussed. I don't know if you had seen it before, but it was my first time seeing it this season, and I was just really impressed by it. It was probably one of the better Groundhog Day inspired movies that I've ever seen.
In quarantine, I watched 2 things to kind of kick off quarantine. The first thing I watched is I watched every single Mission Impossible movie.
Nice.
And I remember that right after that, I turned on Palm Springs.
What a difference.
Well, yeah, you dude. I was like, after Mission Impossible, you're hyped up. I'm like looking up, how can I join the FBI? Incredible. Even though they're different things, obviously, but love it. Love me some Tom Cruise, and then he needs to get off of that ledge, Park.
There you go.
So,
yeah.
Here we go. My list. I put Annie Hall as 10. The com scale put Sabrina. I did do a notable mention of Footloose being number 10, Park, just for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, the recognition at least.
I did Breakfast at Tiffany's at 9. So similar. I feel like our 9 and 10s are just swaps. We both have Sabrina at 8. All of this right now I feel like aligns with our rom-com scale. Rom and com scale.
It's kind of interesting. Those are the first 3 movies of our season. So in a sense, we started off really poorly and just kept building our way up as the season went along.
So for number 7, Park, this is where one of our biggest differences come. I wrote How to Lose a Guy in I Don't Want to Keep Writing a Full Sentence for a movie title.
You have an explicitive in the notes, but we'll let that pass, Rick.
Park, I don't know what you're talking about.
Family-friendly podcast, Rick. Family-friendly podcast.
Number 6, I'm with you at Palm Springs, Park. And when I compare these to the rom and the com scale, they're the exact same. I mean, like, all tied for 6 is Breakfast at Tiffany's, Annie Hall, How to Lose a Guy, and Palm Springs. So my bottom 5 are the same. The rom and the com, Park, never fails.
It never fails. That's incredible, Rick. That's absolutely incredible.
No, Park.
Rick, I'm going to go ahead and give you my 5 through 3 now. All right?
Give it to me.
Okay, my number 5 on my official list is Crazy Stupid Love. My number 4 on my official list is The Big Sick, your pick for this season. And my number 3 is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And how that correlates with the rom and the com scale from this season is at number 5, I had How to Lose a Guy at 10 Days. tied for third, I had You've Got Mail and Crazy Stupid Love. So a little bit of difference there in the middle of my list from the rom-com scale to my final official likings.
Some might say you failed the rom and the com scale, Park.
Or did the rom and the com scale fail me, Rick?
No, Park, it never fails. So here we go. Okay, You've Got Mail at 5. The rom-com scale also rated it a tie for third place with Hitch at 4 and Crazy Stupid Love at 3. Literally, the scale is perfect, Park.
It's absolutely matching. That's incredible.
It is immaculate.
Rick, I really did let down the rom and the com scale. I failed.
I did not look at that scale slide before I did these two. I had no reference for that.
Rick, this is incredible. If it goes all the way to the top, I'm going to be absolutely shocked. All right, top 2. I'll go ahead and share my top 2 with number 2 being Hitch. I absolutely adore this film. This is arguably one of my favorite rom-coms all time. And it's definitely probably, if this was specifically just for com on this list, it's probably number 1 for com of the season, Rick. I love this. I love the movie. And then finally, number 1, no surprise here, if you know me, When Harry Met Sally. I think it's the ultimate rom-com. I think everything has tried to chase this film since its conception, and many films have come close. Many films have been at near heights as When Harry Met Sally, but it's just the ultimate rom-com with the best couple, with the, fantastic interwoven rom and com all wrapped up into one. When Harry Met Sally is my number 1 for this season. And how that compares to the rom and the com scale is it finally matches, Rick. Those are my number 1 and 2 on my rom-com scale as well. So a lot of shifts and differences between the rom-com scale and my final list, but the top 2 hold firm.
It knows your heart in the end, Park. It'll get you there. Well, my number 2 that matches the rom and the com is Harry and Sally. All the reasons you said, it's a great movie. It probably started, I feel like, in the way that I feel like a lot of movies try to copy and repeat and do all these things for When Harry Met Sally. I think that's what makes it so great, is when you have a lot of things imitating you. And the big thing to me is the comedy still holds up. Like, I think that's still such a funny and ridiculous movie at times. I think that's what you want with the rom-com. Park, my number 1, and it's my only 10 of the season, is
Hit me with it.
The Big Sick. Who would have thought? My choice.
Wow, your choice. Look at that, Rick.
The Big Sick is the top 30 movie for me all time. I think it might be the only rom-com that would get in there. Harry and Sally might get in there too. I love it. I think the dialogue is insane. I think the comedy is amazing.
Rick,
I think the facts...
It's a real-life story.
I know. I was going to say, I think the fact that the husband and wife that lived this story wrote it. I think that's awesome. I love everything about The Big Sick. I think it's hilarious, and I feel like I have a soft spot for Ray Romano. Maybe that's what pushed it over the edge. I think that Ray Romano is he's so insanely awkward that almost every single thing he says is funny in some way. I don't even think it's the lines. I think it's just Ray Romano.
I gotta agree with that. Gotta love a little Ray Romano.
So I will say that is my number 1, Park.
Wow, Rick. Look at that. Another season, another ranking list. We did it.
Yes. So when Harry got The Big Sally Sick is the number 1 movie.
Wow. Incredible. So that did mimic your rom-com skill perfectly, right?
It did. It was perfect. And honestly, when I was filling this out, again, I did not look at this prior. When I was filling this out, literally all the movies I've tied for 6 between Tiffany's, Annie Hall, How's Those Guy, and Palm Springs, I could have put those movies anywhere in those 4 slots. Honestly, so wow. I trust the scale, Park.
You really do, Rick. It's been a pleasure, and we got to start wrapping this season up now. There is one more thing that we need to do before we sign off for yet another season. Do you know what that is, Rick?
Well, I have no idea what movie I'm watching next week. So
Rick,
I guess you got to tell me.
we're not ready to announce what movie we're watching next week, but we are next whenever we come back after this season. But we are willing to tell you what our next genre is going to be. You're just going to have to find out on our socials what our first movie of the season will be, so you can watch along with us. But Rick, we are moving away from romantic comedies and flying up into our starships into the sci-fi genre. Next season, we are going through the decades of all the best sci-fi movies.
Park, is he going to get existential? Maybe talk about what makes a sci-fi movie, what doesn't.
I think it's been a good season, just from the little comments that we've had back and forth about sci-fi, and your apparently considering Dune Part 1 a 7 out of 10 average sci-fi movie and all that. I think we're going to have some heated debates and topics and a lot of fun next season.
It's true. I told Parker, we can't leak it. I have a list of movies. Well, there's obviously movies that I hate. I don't think I make a list for those. I have a list of movies that I think that are okay to good that I still never want to watch again. The majority of this list is sci-fi movies. I told Parker, some of these movies, I'll change this rule for you.
Yeah, there's at least one that I will absolutely fight for because it's one of my favorite films of all time and probably my favorite sci-fi film, and that'll be my pick for next season. It's so exciting to already know what my pick is going to be before the season even starts, Rick.
That's so exciting, Parker. I'm pumped for you.
Well, with that, guys, I think it's about time that we sign off on yet another season of Two Dudes, One Movie podcast. I've been your host, Parker. That's my co-host, Rick. This has been Two Dudes, One Movie podcast, the podcast where two dudes dive into cinematic masterpieces from a different decade each week. From black and white classics to modern-day blockbusters, we'll be covering it all. Until next season with our sci-fi picks, we'll see you then.
I'm going to go sleep.
Two Dudes, One Movie podcast is an independently created podcast.
Like, rate, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen.
You can find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can also find us on YouTube, where we post full video recordings of each episode.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Two Dudes, One Movie podcast.
Thanks for listening.